France has won a Battle of Waterloo against Belgium, at least a monetary one. This year sees the 200th anniversary of the historic battle in which British and German armies beat Napoleon. To mark the bicentenary, Belgium submitted a design for a €2 coin, but Paris was livid and got it withdrawn. France complained to the European Council that the coin would be a negative symbol for the French people, as well as appearing prejudicial as well, with the potential to cause hostility. But British MPs have been abused by the gripe, telling the French to grow up and get over the defeat. After all, it was in 1815. Here's RT's Anastasia Cherkina.
Want to learn how to keep a grudge for 2 centuries? Turns out France may be able to teach you. Back in the day when France, Belgium and Britain were not all part of the same bloc called the European Union, in 1815 Napoleon was defeated in the Battle of Waterloo. Fast forward 200 years, Belgium, where the battle took place, says, wouldn't it be nice to issue a commemorative coin to mark the big anniversary? But an emotionally fragile France says, hold it, we were defeated, so the coin is offensive to our people. It would only bring back bad memories.
This is an age of French grandeur, of French influence, French Europe, effectively. And actually what Waterloo represents is a rolling back on that, a change in the tide of controlling Europe, of influencing Europe, of all these sorts of things. So we can really see why it smarts, why it hurts, why it might offend the national dignity.
But isn't a coin just a coin, and isn't France simply overreacting?
Well, I don't know why they're so sensitive. What's the problem?
They're full of themselves, sometimes.
200 years ago. Should be used to it by now.
With calls from all over the EU for France to grow up and show some team spirit, perhaps the French should flip a coin to decide if they should move on instead of flipping out. Anastasia Cherkina, RT, London.
The latest return to Earth of a crew from the International Space Station was something of a rough ride for the 2 Russian cosmonauts and the American astronaut. Those who were keeping track of the landing were alarmed by the bad weather. Messages of foggy and overcast conditions in Kazakhstan kept popping up on Twitter. In another nail-biting twist, there was a communications blackout, but fortunately, it was only temporarily. Despite all that, the crew made it safely back to Earth, as Anna Julia Hedges reports.
Expedition 41, which launched back in September 2014, have safely made their homebound journey back to Earth. On board the Soyuz space rocket were Russian cosmonaut Alexander Samokutyaev, Yelena Sirova, as well as NASA's astronaut Barry Wilmore. Now, Yelena Sirova is actually the first ever Russian female cosmonaut to have made the trip to the International Space Station, and this is something that triggered the attention of the media, and she actually became a very popular figure even before making her trip onto space. In recent days, the weather has actually been worsening. There is currently snow on the ground where the Soyuz rocket has landed. However, this did not prevent it from making it a perfectly punctual as well as safe landing. Now that the trio has returned home, there remain 3 astronauts back on the International Space Station. However, on the night between the 27th and the 28th of March, they will be joined by a new crew, and 2 of the new members, including a Russian cosmonaut and an American astronaut, will actually remain on the ISS for a full year in order to conduct experiments.
The list of those who will soon check in at the ISS includes bringing a touch of showbiz to the stars. British singer Sarah Brightman has been training in Moscow and is expected to make the trip this autumn. She talks to Sophie Shevardnadze about her next adventure.
This particular journey has been something that I've wanted to do most of my life. It was exciting just to be put through things like going into the centrifuge, altitude chamber, tip tables, the sort of rotating chair, and find out that I was capable of doing these particular things and not thrown by it. And it gave me a lot of strength inside and a lot of centre that I could deal with these things.
So you're going to be performing your first live concert from outer space.
What I'd love to do is sing something very simple and connect with either orchestra, choir, other singers on Earth. And, you know, from that sort of space to Earth connection.
The US is the only nation in the world which jails juveniles for life sentences without the chance of parole, and it's drawn fresh criticism from the United Nations. A recent report on torture called it a cruel and inhumane punishment, demanding the measures to be limited to exceptional cases only. Menggunakan takes a closer look.
The United States is once again being singled out on the global stage for its detention practices, and it has nothing to do with suspected terrorists. A United Nations report on child detention notes that the U.S. is the only nation in the world to imprison children for life without the possibility of parole, which some interpret as being a death in prison sentence. The practice is also banned under several international laws.
I believe that the detention of children must always be a last resort, to be used only for the shortest time possible, and only if it is in the best interest of the child.
According to the Sentencing Project, about 2,500 individuals, 2,500, are currently serving out mandatory life sentences behind bars for crimes they committed as children.
A juvenile may not have been the so-called trigger man in a homicide that occurs, but depending on state law, they might all go down for the same crime and all get life without parole.
Dominic Culpepper was 15 years old when he was sentenced to life in prison in 2002 for beating another teenager to death. His mother says the justice system should be rehabilitating young boys instead of forcing them to live and die behind bars.
I don't want him to get a slap on the wrist at all. I agree that he must serve, but I don't want to see his life thrown away for the rest of his life behind bars.
In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court outlawed mandatory life sentences without parole for kids under 18, deeming the practice unconstitutional. However, judges at the state level still technically have the power to send a child to prison for life.
If America could be sending so much messages to the world that we are the greatest nation, then why do we do these things?
RT reached out to the Department of Justice asking what actions the U.S. plans on taking to comply with international law of child detention. We were referred to the State Department, which then referred us back to the DOJ. In the meantime, the UN has kicked off its Stop Child Torture social media campaign aimed at ending the harmful conditions kids experience when locked behind bars. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
Financial fighting talk next on oil prices and America's money worries. Stand by for Boom Bust.